Welcome to the Clemson Insider on the Beat. This is a very special one for me because this guy here to my left, William Qualkinbush with WCCP The Roar, a guy I mentored, worked for me for a number of years. You guys know him because he's worked here with the Clemson Insider, still does, works for their magazine and stuff. And so it's special for me to have Qualk on the beat with me because I remember when he was this young college student trying to make his way into this profession.
And a lot more hair than...
And now he's a colleague. Yeah, a lot more hair, a lot little facial hair.
Right.
But now he's a colleague, man. It's awesome, man.
I appreciate that.
Man,
you know, once a mentor, always a mentor, though.
Yeah.
This guy really, he's a great mentor. I'm not just saying that, but I am saying it specifically because he's right here, but not only for that reason. I want to point that out.
Exactly. Well, thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, it's fun. We've had the pleasure to cover this football program here for the last few years and the run they're on, but. Here we are, Qualk, in week 3 of this season, and so far, just you're like us. You get to talk to the players and coaches. What's your impression so far from the first 3 weeks of the season?
Well, it is really interesting the edge that they have, and it's hard to put a finger on exactly why, other than they're good enough to be and they don't cheat themselves. Mm-hmm. Brent Venables always talks about you can't cheat the game. Respect the opponent, respect the game. Or it's going to humble you real quick. And if I had a better Brent Venables impression, I would just do it because I love how he.
I would love to
how
see
he does
your
that.
Brent Venables impression.
But, it's a lot of this right here. If I start standing up and like waving around my hands like this, that's the Brent Venables. That's like the lean in, waving hands. That's like
hold on,
minute 12
I need to
of
get back guy.
That's true.
Love you, Adam.
No, that's the. That's the difference in this team is that they're good enough and they do respect the opponent, they respect the game, and because they have the easy way to create adversity for themselves. So the adversity is Texas A&M. We struggled with them last year. Mm-hmm. The adversity was then, and now the adversity is in our own internal play. How can we overcome all the things that we did wrong last year and destroy them? And they sort of did. Syracuse, even 4 years ago at Syracuse, I started looking more into that game. That was an annoying game against Syracuse. 2013 was they played zero coverage all over and Taj Boyd just lit them up.
Right.
2015, that was a 10-point game.
Yeah.
And they were able to overcome, I think, 2 sort of performances in 15 and 17 and go up there and really destroy them. Just that killer instinct that they have coming off a national championship. We talk about hangovers a lot with championship teams. This team doesn't have it, and they, in fact, I think they're very driven to sort of craft their own deal. And that's unique. That's something that's not common anywhere, and that's the type of program Dad was built.
Yeah, they're really focused. When you look at this football team, the focus is the thing that I've noticed, even from fall camp. They just seem to have this different look on them. I think it's because they lost so many of those guys on defense last year that, those were the leaders, those are the guys that carry the team. We all know that to be true, but I think there was a level of, we can still win it without those guys. We love those guys, respect those guys, but we think we're still a very good program without them. And I think there's that level to prove everybody wrong because all you heard in the offseason was, the defense is going to drop off. There's no way after losing that many people they're going to be that productive on defense. They'll get good eventually, but they're going to struggle early in the year, especially against Texas A&M, especially against Syracuse. And they didn't struggle at all in either one of those 2 games defensively. Were they perfect? No. There was you look in the Texas A&M game. There's a blown coverage where the guy runs right past the safety on the second play of the game. If Kellen Mond throws the ball with any accuracy, that's a touchdown right there. And then there's a drop touchdown pass in a cover 2 where he just runs right by him in a cover 2, which should never happen, and he drops the touchdown pass in the end zone. So, Dabo pointed that out too. There's some mistakes that they can coach off of, but for the most part, they make that one mistake, and then it's another 10 or 12, 13, 14 plays before you might see one little sliver after that, because then they just really buckle down and get focused. Against A&M, we saw that one mistake, and really, I know the coaches find more, but it was hard to find many mistakes by that defense in that game.
Yeah.
And the same against Syracuse. They were just so locked in and focused on what they were going to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about the bus, because what happens is when you're elite, and I'm learning this more watching Clemson and really watching just elite teams. I mean, even thinking back to, even from a fan's lens, I mean, you out there as fans, you're watching, the 2015 Alabama Clemson game, and think about where you were, every single time that Clemson missed a big play, a drop pass, an overthrown pass, you're like, oh, there's the one. Oh, man, that's the one play. You have to make every play all the time against this elite team or you're not going to win.
Right.
I know this, God bless you, the Steelers fan, but when you go up against the Patriots, you're like, oh, man, we needed points on that drive when we got the turnover, and now we're going to lose definitely because you have to take advantage of every opportunity.
Instead of 33-10, it's 33-30.
Right, that's exactly right. That's right. So, on the flip side of that, if you're a Clemson or you're Alabama, or you're the elite, sort of the alpha dog, you can have a mistake because all the great plays that you made have really created this sense of unease in your opponent. It's kind of like, I think when you press in basketball, one thing that you want to get from that is the opponent to be out of sorts, where normal things that are open to them, they either don't see them or they don't execute because they're knocked totally off balance. That's kind of the way I see those last two games against Texas A&M and Syracuse. Texas A&M, the big play early, they couldn't hit it, and I think that was a little bit of Kellen Mond being jacked up. Syracuse drops a touchdown right in the hands,
it's 14-7.
right in the end zone.
I mean, do they still have a chance to win the game? Probably not, but at least it's a little more interesting.
You get a sense that you can, like you're good enough to be able to compete in this game.
Right.
When I always look at this too with defense. I said it last year particularly in the NC State game. Remember the NC State game? I said I didn't think NC State would be able to win the matchups they needed to win against Clemson. I was more skeptical of NC State last year, being able to move it and score just because they moved it and scored in the past because of guys that weren't there.
Yeah, and
but
you turned out to be correct.
That's correct. In that game, their scoring drive, I have to go back and look, their scoring drive seemed like it took so much energy. And it was like every ounce of energy and every good play, and they were just gritting and they were just down the field. And you get a touchdown, but it was so hard for you. Are you going to do that 5 times? No, you're not.
And that's
Texas A&M. Yeah, when you got a 48-play drive that lasts 6 years, and I mean,
16 plays, 40 yards.
Yeah.
For a field goal.
They had one play of over 10 yards on that entire series. Yeah. I mean, it was like gritty and tough, and it was like every third and one.
16-play, 40-yard drive?
I've
never seen a 16-play, 40-yard drive.
No. And you get a field goal at the end, and you're like, okay, this is like when you get to the end of the rainbow and the pot of gold's got like one coin in it. And you're like, I worked all that way to get here for this garbage. I mean, this is crazy. And so what are you going to do? You're like, well,
and
we're not going to be able to do that.
It's a chocolate coin.
It's not even a real coin. It's not even a real coin. So that's what Brent Venables' defense does to you. You have the one opportunity where you might be able to get something going, but he finds a way in the middle of that to make a stand. And when he doesn't is when the team's in danger of losing. When he doesn't is Syracuse a couple years ago, where you get coverage busts and guys running wide open down the seam, where you get Texas A&M, where Kellen Mond's just throwing like hand grenades and guys are catching it with their one hand like this.
He's doing like Kenny Stabler throwing in the sea of hands just to see,
just
throw it up, see if somebody catches it. That's how I refer to that one play.
But they're so consistently tough to move the ball on that you almost panic when you get a chance. You can almost see what people are like, all right, this is our one chance. We can't blow it. And so it causes mistakes when they create that mentality. And that's what this team's done. You remove the personalities from last year's team, and what you find is the personalities had an immense amount of talent. But I do think that the personalities that left, the Power Rangers and those guys, Trayvon Mullen even, and Trayvon Island or whatever you want to call it out there, where he was dominating people. When you remove personality, it almost feels like a double loss.
Right.
When in reality, you don't need to replace personality like that. You don't need it. It was a luxury that Clemson had, a group of guys that genuinely loved each other, cared about each other, in Bryant and Farrell and Lawrence and Wilkins, and even Huggins, on that second unit.
Right.
It's a luxury that they have that type of personality and that camaraderie. What you really were replacing is talent. And if you look past the personality part, there was enough talent there. And what Brent Venables has said in the first 3 games is, we don't really even need to replace all that talent because I can do just as much damage with 3 down linemen as I did with 4 because I got 4 safeties that can play, and I got corners that can play, and I got Isaiah Simmons who's a freak, and we can put 6 DBs on the field, and we're just fine.
Exactly.
That's sort of the amazing part of it, and it's something that we didn't talk about, but that I've kind of learned with this team is that when you replace personality, as long as you have leadership, which is not the same thing, as long as you have leadership, you don't have to replace that part. You're just replacing the talent that was on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. Now we'll switch it over real fast with the offense. I'm not worried about it. I know you aren't either. Trevor Lawrence, he's thrown 5 interceptions. Yes, Dabo said today, 2 of those interceptions are the wide receivers. The other 3, I guess you could charge to Trevor. But, for the most part, Dabo's like, I ain't worried about it. Jeff Scott said, I ain't worried about it. And I think Trevor Lawrence isn't worried about it. And when you have a player like Trevor Lawrence and like Deshaun Watson, these are guys that, they're going to throw interceptions because they're probably going to throw a lot of touchdown passes too, because they're going to take more risks that a Kelly Bryant's not going to do because he doesn't have that kind of arm to do it, where they're going to take those chances. So naturally, the interceptions are going to go up a little bit because he trusts his arm a little bit more. He says, I can make that window. And he's like, I can't make it. I guess I'll make sure I don't do that next time. But I think when you look at the totality of how he calls a game, Trevor Lawrence that is, people don't understand. They just see his passing statistics. They're like, oh my gosh, 5 interceptions. But they're not looking at the whole totality where he's running, he's calling the line plays. How many sacks has offensive line get up right now? 2.
Yeah.
2. So he's calling the line plays. He's also getting the running backs in position. He's, checking at the line of scrimmage. And one thing he's done so well this year that I thought he's done better than he did a year ago is with the zone read and how he's making the right decisions in the running game. And even in the RPOs with the touchdown pass to Amari Rodgers, that's an RPO. That 87-yard touchdown. Amari made the play happen, but Trevor read what was happening and what the safety was doing. He's like, I got him on the outside because the safety's sneaking up to play the run. Boom, pulls it out. 87 yards later, they got a touchdown. That's Trevor Lawrence. That's Trevor Lawrence making those calls. Your thoughts on TL and how he's played the first 3 weeks?
Well, I do think people have overreacted a little bit. Some of it is regression to the mean because, and I know we don't think about these things in a broad context, but if you think about Trevor Lawrence's season last year, there were balls that he put in jeopardy that you thought to yourself afterwards, I can't believe that wasn't picked. Mm-hmm. When you're just looking at the stat sheet, there's not a category for those. They just go as incompletions. You didn't have 4 interceptions and 9 almost interceptions.
Correct.
Where you can look and say, he had 4 interceptions, 9 almost interceptions. This year, he's had 5 interceptions, but no almost interceptions, so he's not putting as many balls in jeopardy. You can't quantify that. Mm-hmm. You can't, there's not a separate category for those. And so I think some of it was that a ball that might have been tipped against, let's say, Boston College last year, that's way up in the middle of the field and tipped in the air and 6 guys dive for it and they all watch it go right at their fingertips. I mean, this year it might get picked off just because it's the next one and those are 50-50 type plays. I mean, even the one at Syracuse where Higgins is, he said he ran the wrong route. He's, the ball's tipped in the air by the corner and he just happens to tip it straight up where he can run and go pick it. Exactly. I mean, some of that is just circumstance. It's just happenstance, right. Just things that happen. But to your point, I think this offense will look better in October and November. And we have to also remember that last year, that's right. Last year, it didn't look as good in September as it did October, November. And we didn't really see Trevor Lawrence in September. We have not seen Trevor Lawrence run the Clemson September offense, which I'm trying to figure out still. I'm kind of focus grouping how to qualify this, but I think Clemson's offense almost sets itself up to possibly fail. Because here's what they do, and this as somebody who likes football. By the way,
is he right, Jeff Scott?
That's right. If I keep saying really controversial stuff, you can email me or whatever. First of all, first and goal at like the 5, you love that, don't you? As a defensive guy.
Oh yeah.
You're like, oh man, let's see this defense. Everybody else mad about the pick. You're like, oh man, this is what.
Oh yeah, I was too.
Oh.
I was I'm that one guy that's like loving that there's goal line stands and stuff. I mean, I'm like Brent Venables over there. Just like, if somebody pulled me back,
Right. So here's my question. I'll ask you some of these questions to set it up. Do we think Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott are smart people?
Absolutely.
Do we think that they know how to create a good game plan?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when 2 of the first 3 runs against Georgia Tech go for negative yardage, is that because Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott scripted bad plays, or is it something else?
That's because something Georgia Tech was doing. Sure.
Okay, now, I think the first quarter of all these games, Clemson is using to see, can we do this? Yes or no? If so, why? Is it because of something we're doing or because of something they're showing us? If it's something they're showing us, are they going to keep showing it or not?
Yep.
And they fill all those questions. Right. And they keep answering all those questions and then they kind of are like, okay. And instead of doing it again, they're like, well, let's try this other thing over here. Like, they're not really leaning into, okay, we can do this, so we'll just do this for 4 quarters and blow these people's tails.
They're not going to the Chad Morris script.
Right. They're not
Chad
saying,
Morris keeps doing it.
If I get this over and over again, we're not going to take the bait, we're not going to do that for 2 reasons. One, because I think it creates tape to teach from. I honestly believe this, that Clemson is such a good program. Right? This is such homer talk. I kind of hate it. Clemson is such an elite program now that they can intentionally call plays that have less than 100% chance of working based on what they see, so that there is something to teach from. I actually believe that they might do that in first quarters of games.
What did Kelly say to you when you suggested this?
I'm not sure I've said it that strongly yet. But then on the other side, in the second quarter, they're like, okay, well, we try to do this, and they're giving us this look, and we want to do this. So how about we do these things? Like in the Texas A&M game where they didn't run the ball very well. Mm-hmm. So what did they do? ETN in the flat. A couple screen passes in there to different guys. Boom, all of a sudden the box lightens up, they run the ball. Mm-hmm. So they now know how to make the defense give them the look that they want to do the thing they want to do in the first place. So first quarter is about what looks are they giving us. Second quarter is about how do we make the defense change what they're doing so that then we can do what we want. That's essentially Clemson's offensive strategy here in September. And they know because the defense is good that they don't have to, they could score 10 and win the last 2 ball games, really. I mean, Texas A&M scored 3. It says 10. They scored 3. They would have never, if it was 10-3, they would have never scored their last touchdown.
No, I agree.
That's what strikes me about this group, is that they could score 60 on teams, but they're not, almost so that they can teach and so that they can just kind of explore and take a long approach to developing this offense.
Well, remember when they got going last year, it was mid-season, and Taj Boyd said this last year to me and Robert, was that, hey, when it gets to the season set up, the way Coach Sweeney does it is he wants to be start playing their best ball by mid-season, and they want to get better. So they want to get better each week, and by the time they get to week 6 and 7, they want to start hitting their stride. Mm-hmm. And if you look at last year, and if you look at 17, and you look at 15 and 16, and it's the same recipe. That's why I understand why fans get mad, because it's the same recipe. Go look at 2015, you see the same thing. Go look at 2017, you see the same thing. 16, you see the same thing. 17, you see the same thing. 18, you see the same thing, and you're seeing it this year. Mm-hmm. It's about getting better as the season goes along. That's why he plays a lot of young players, gives them experience, and by the time they hit to that run where they got to get into that playoff run mode, as you call it, that championship mode, as he calls it, when they get into November, they're playing the best football at that time. We've seen that every year. We saw it last year, definitely when Deshaun Watson's last year, they definitely did the same thing. Remember, they struggled so early in that year. Mm-hmm. People forget about that. 2016 team struggled mightily all the time. Every week they were like, okay, are they going to barely win every game?
Remember at Auburn, where they had to win a game that didn't get to 20?
Exactly.
I mean, that was not an offensive masterpiece.
And then what happened in the Fiesta Bowl? They just blew Ohio State out of the water. So and them go and beat Alabama for the national title. So Dabo knows what he's doing. The coaches know what they're doing. Trust them. Trevor Lawrence is fine. Offense is fine. They're averaging 544 yards a game, for goodness sake. Come on, people.
Now, if we get in October, November, and Trevor Lawrence continues to have multiple interception games and the offense doesn't, then you can start getting more concerned as things go on, but not right now.
Not right now.
And
I'll hold it back.
I will say one more thing to what you're saying. Let's think about this. The number of players that you play, okay? We know that Clemson had a distinct advantage over Alabama and Georgia last year in terms of players play. I think Oklahoma, Ohio State, you name it, they had a significant advantage. I believe one weakness in teams that try to just blow everybody out and try to just be whoever they can be or want to be or whatever is that not just that you're putting stuff on film, but that you're putting stuff on film a lot. Mm-hmm. So if Clemson was in September the same offense that they are in November, schematically, execution-wise, whatever, then you would have 12 different chances to put film of a team having success against your thing out there for Alabama, for Georgia or Oklahoma, Ohio State, whoever. When you peak in November, then you got 4 games where maybe you played a couple teams that didn't know what to do. Maybe you played one team that had success, but you hadn't seen it take a bunch of forms. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not advocating throwing games in September, October, but it's part of the luxury of having a team that's good enough, is that
that's the key.
When you don't just run it like Wisconsin, or you don't throw it like Washington State with Mike Leach, And you don't just say, well, all we have to do today is run it a bunch, so here's all our run plays, and you just dump them all out. Then what you do is you don't expose yourself too quickly. I mean, it's like broadcasting your poker hand to everybody before the flop. Like you're going to lose that because either people are going to get out or they're going to know how to play you. Mm-hmm. You keep your cards close to the vest for as long as you can. You develop within the very simple scheme that you have and the almost unidentified or undefined scheme that you have. And then you kind of narrow it down and you become more of an identity football team when you get to the point in the season when it really matters, which they talk about championship mode. And you can see it every November. That championship phase is when they really dial it in and you start seeing them lean into what they do really well. You start seeing them become less scattered and more focused, I think, in the way they call plays and the way they sort of move the ball down the field offensively. That's what you'll see. And I think that it looks like a weakness right now compared to some of Clemson's peers, but it is a strength over the long haul of seasons. And we have to learn, like you said, we have to learn the lessons of previous years where this exact same paradigm was playing out and it ended up in Clemson's favor. You have to trust with the same staff and very similarly talented players that they're going to be able to do it again.
There's no doubt in my mind. I'm with you, man. Good stuff, dude. You're always great. That's all we got today for On the Beat here on the Clemson Insider. For William Qualkinbush, I'm Will Vandervoort. Stay tuned to the Clemson Insider all week as we kind of break down the game against Charlotte and get you set for this Saturday's game in the Valley. Talk to you later.
Love this guy.